We are back with Urza's tower. Again, this is essentially just a massive storage tower here. I'm just going to make a few adjustments just to some cable management, just to kind of clean this up a little bit and avoid any potential future issues, just because I'd like this to be a long-term machine. So we have a few hard drives we're going to add in here. The first one is apparently a new in-bag Hitachi solid-state drive. This one is, I believe, 750 gig. Not 100% sure. Found this new in bag at the recycler, so that's pretty exciting. Obviously somebody didn't need it, so their loss, my gain. And you can see we've got some new cables and a new power supply, so we can add up to 4 SATA drives, which I believe will pretty close to max this out, if I'm not mistaken. We've got 2 open there, and I want to say there was potentially another 2, but actually we may only be able to add another 2 SATA drives, which no big deal. We've got the extra power here, so we can plug in the optical drive, and also the existing solid state. What I'd ultimately like to do is figure out some way to mount that to this drive, so that we can mount this drive properly into the case. Right now this is only set up for 3.5-inch drives, so for the time being we're just going to kind of rig something up so that we can actually functionally use this drive. I think the easiest way to do that will be to, well, honestly, just find a spot where we can screw this into place, and then hopefully it'll stay. But it should line up with a couple of screw holes. Hopefully somewhere in this case where it'll hold up just fine. So we're going to try that, and then in addition to that drive, I've got 2 more. These are both Western Digital Blue 500 gigabyte. And again, we've only got 2 options here, so we're only going to use the one. It's fine. I don't mind having a spare. And we'll go ahead and mount that 3.5-inch drive to this bottom portion down here. That's where the fans are located, and as far as I can tell, that's the best place to mount an additional 3.5-inch drive. So I'm just going to get to work on this and kind of talk my way through it. Again, we'll have to add a power cord, and we'll have to add a couple of SATA cables. I've got a red one in there. I am going to go ahead and swap out, if it's not too much trouble, with a black one, just for uniformity's sake. After all, this is a tower I'll be keeping, so I want it to kind of look nice. I'm not huge into aesthetics where it's going to make or break my experience with this tower, but again, it would just be nice, just for the sake of aesthetics, to have matching cables. Then if I ever do any kind of, like, advanced cable management, that's something that I'll definitely consider, definitely doing if I don't do it now. So on the subject of cable management, this modular power supply, I mean, it's nice in several ways. It's a little frustrating because it's got some extra cables that simply aren't necessary. And to be honest, I just wish there were fewer cables there overall. Now, that being said, again, this is not a deal breaker. This is probably one of the most powerful machines I've ever had the privilege of working with. So that being said, for me, it's not so much about how pretty it is, but how functional it ends up being. So we'll have to find a couple of screws to fit this drive. That'll work. It's nice when the first 2 screws I try are the ones I need. And then we are just going to have to kind of thumb this into place gently, just so that it lines up. And then we'll work on getting it mounted here So assuming that this is the 750, I believe it to be, that'll put us at another 1.25 gigabytes, or excuse me, terabytes, another 1.25 terabytes for this machine overall. So that will give us a significant boost in space. Cut. And with the boost in space will come a fair level of future functionality. Basically whatever I end up doing with this machine in the long run, whether it becomes a file server or something of the like, you know, ideally I'll have some kind of a clue in the future. That all being said, I really don't have a plan for this machine. I was thinking about this the other day, is that, you know, with all the power I'm going to have here, I think this might be too, oh, no, that's the right size. With all the power I have here, you know, this even puts the desktop I normally use to shame. In terms of space, I think processor speed is fairly comparable to what I normally use. But, you know, that being said, you know, is this something I'm going to make it into my, you know, typical everyday kind of use machine, or, you know, is this just going to be a fun project? I mean, it's got enough power where I feel like I almost have to do something useful with it to justify the fact that I have it. Now that being said, and not particularly married to one purpose or another here either, it just would be nice to have a purpose that I could, you know, give this machine, you know, just out of courtesy's sake. So that also presents me with the other question of, you know, if I am going to make this a, you know, drive I use quite frequently, you know, what at the end of the day is going to be the final purpose of the machine, you know, that I don't know. You know, it's just something that I feel like if you have the space, why not use it? And I don't need a bunch of, you know, absurdly large hard drives to, you know, essentially do anything with. I'm not moving a lot of data or anything, but if I continue to make YouTube videos, I do like to retain all the original files just so that I have a copy in case I want to upload it elsewhere, you know, without having watermark or loss of quality. You know, I'm not really versed in the other video platforms out there, so, you know, I want to be ready in case, you know, stuff gets lost, or, you know, eventually, for the YouTubers out there, eventually you do take stuff down that's not really relevant anymore too. So that would be possibly the next step, is, you know, this could be my video archive, and then if I ever, you know, wanted to do a compilation, or, you know, the early works version of my stuff, if that's what we want to call it, I have that option if I've, you know, saved all of this material. So as I've been jibber-jabbering here, I realize that I'm not going to have enough SATA connectors for this optical drive. And as I think about that, to be quite honest, I really don't think I even need it. You know, I don't know if this is it's not even a Blu-ray. It's really not something I need. I'll leave it in there just because I don't have a faceplate for the case. But it's just going to be non-functional, and I'm okay with that. That's not, again, it was never make or break that I had to get that optical drive working. For some reason, I thought there were 4 additional SATA bays in here, and I don't know how I got confused on that part, but that's okay. No big deal. The other thing is, I'm sure there are a few people out there who are just like really upset about this, you know, cable management or lack thereof, and I get it. I really do. This is definitely not how I would want my cables to be managed in my computer. But at the same time, you know, I am dealing with the machine as best I can. You know, I do notice that the control panel cable that plugs in from the top of the computer where the power switch is to the USB channel is so heavy, it actually kind of bends the pins on the board. So you'd have to kind of stiffen it up. So I'm going to try and actually loop one of these power cables around it. Honestly, just to try and hold that in place to prevent possible future damage. You know, that being said too, there is extra ports on this board. You know, in the future I might be able to add like a card SATA connector that you know, might grant me additional devices that I could install on this, which would be kind of cool. Although I don't know if they even make those. The one thing is I kind of got out of the computer world for a few years, you know, because it got expensive basically, and I was fresh out of college. So a lot of the stuff I'm used to working with is just simply older stuff. Although you would think, being used to older stuff, I wouldn't bungle things like I did in one of my shorts recently, where I called in obviously a PCI port, an IDE port, an IDE port, which is not the easiest mistake in the world to make. But I mean, a lot of these videos I shoot late at night just for purposes of ease, and you know, I have kids, so the kids are asleep. You know, it just for me is more convenient. The trouble is those mistakes do happen, and it's mostly funny. I'm not embarrassed by that or anything, but I have to admit it was kind of comical. So one thing that is going to work just in a pinch, it just so happens that this set of wires here kind of perfectly aligns with the size of these side holes. So we're just going to kind of use this to hold this card up so it doesn't touch anything and short itself, cause any issues with that solid state drive. Now again, the cable management on this, not ideal, but it will work in a pinch. And I do have a little zip tie that I actually intend on kind of using to bunch these up a little bit better than they are. Now this is a releasing zip tie, so if I want to change this in the future, I certainly can, without having to cut it and, you know, work a sharp edge in here where potentially I might cause some damage. Now that being said, again, this is not the prettiest solution. Certainly there are people out there that are going to dislike this, and I get it. You know, I'm not trying to excuse it. It's just a, you know, resolution in a pinch here. So we're just going to tighten this up. I'm going to leave this on so I can reuse this if I ever take it off. But that pretty well clears out most of the cable mess. There is a little bit jammed in here. I'm just trying to keep stuff free of the bottoms of these hard drives to the extent possible. I think that's not too bad. We haven't had any issues lately with cables touching anything of any kind of substance. The fans have hit their own cables on a couple of occasions, so just to work around that, just gonna kind of pull some stuff around. That's gonna get caught in that processor fan, so just gonna kind of use these wonky cables against themselves and just try and clip a few things together if possible here. I don't know that this is designed to clip into itself, but we're going to try it. Yeah, it doesn't work, but it is holding that out of the way for now. And when this turns up on its side, essentially I'm trying to avoid something coming crashing down or getting stuck in a processor fan or something, because I do have a side panel that's going to fit on here. This case does have a side panel. It's a little beat up, it's not pretty, but it'll be functional, and it should be everything this case needs. Now just doing a quick run through. Obviously if I ever want to expand here through a video card in this, I'm going to have to move these cables around. But again, this is a self-releasing zip tie, so that'll be pretty easy. I do want to try and find a case for this to mount that similarly to this one over here. I have not been able to find one online. So if anybody has a line on a case for a solid state hard drive, I think this one was pulled out of a laptop, you know, even a 3D printed one, you know, something from Amazon or eBay or whatever, just has to fit. I mean, this is a standard size, and would have to be something that I could screw through this particular PCB. So drop me a comment, let me know if there's something out there that you've seen. With that, I'm going to go ahead and hit the power button, get the power plugged back in. I did switch the video connector over to DVI so we could get a look at that. Now I'm not going to have the camera on the screen here, but I did just want to get it plugged in for my own eyes. I got some feedback today that I should just start using my tripod more, so I'm trying to give you guys a much more stable picture. Hopefully this helps. But we've got fans on. This has a very odd little restart function where it starts up and then kills, starts up again, and then it's fine. I don't see an issue with that. It hasn't caused any problems, so we're just going to let it ride. And it should be now configured to boot properly from the smaller solid state. Now this is only 65 gigabytes or something, so it's fairly small. But we've got some pretty interesting stuff here. So it wants me to enter setup, probably because I've connected bootable hard drives. So it really doesn't know what to boot. So we are going to just boot manage. Yep, that's the correct hard drive. And it's not registering the side fan. For whatever reason, it needs a kickstart. Not going to worry about that. I'll probably replace that fan in time anyway. Now it's running. Everything's good. Memory checks out. Temperature on the CPU, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, holding steady. Oddly enough, it looks like the BIOS, date and time is wrong. So, not sure why that is. I'm guessing we might have a dead CMOS battery. Unfortunately, I've run out of spare batteries, but we'll tackle that in the future here. So we're going to go ahead and just boot. Same changes and reset. Alright. And I'm narrating this, but as you can see, everything appears to be working. Power is running to those new hard drives. Tricky thing with this machine is, up until recently, there was a bootable Windows 7 hard disk in here, and that Windows 7 disk kept trying to override the solid state, so it wouldn't boot properly to Windows. I have formatted all of the drives except for the new ones I've added. This one's new out of the bag, so there shouldn't be anything on it. This one here, though, I don't know. It's taking a little bit longer than I expected for it to boot, so I'm hoping that we don't have any major issues here with connecting these new hard drives, but we'll just have to see. Okay, it's going into disk checking, which is good. I'm going to let it ride through. Shouldn't find any errors because most of these drives are blank. But I'm assuming that this drive here is going to need a check. And I think anytime you have this many disk drives installed, chances are it's going to want to check them. Again, I don't anticipate any errors. Most of these have been formatted and should be working just fine. And the good news is I don't hear any clicks or anything that would indicate disk error, physically speaking. So if there are any errors, it's probably a software issue which can be fixed pretty quick and easy with a format or recovery. The one thing about the disk check when you have this many drives attached is it may take a very long time. especially with anything with data on it. It's going to take a lot of time to go through and check all of those memory points. So far, so good. Particular volume it's on now must have some data on it. I don't think it's the solid state, but it might be. And if that's the case, it should go fairly quickly. And if it's the new physical hard drive, I mean, honestly, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Again, I do have another 500 gigabyte drive I can throw in there. Whether or not it's got bootable data on it or something remains to be seen. But having a backup half terabyte is always a good thing. Plenty of XP and later machines laying around that could use a sizable hard drive. I do have a couple of retro rigs I'm still working on, so if you're not enthralled with this particular content, I would encourage you to hit subscribe, hit that like button, hit that notification button, and stay up to date with what I've got going on. I anticipate I'll have some more retro videos coming, and definitely in the future I fully intend on heading off to the recycler, depositing some of the non-working computers and shells from what I've scrapped, and picking up some new stuff to go through and analyze, see what we can restore, see what we're going to end up tearing down, and go from there. Hopefully that'll come just before the new year. I'm hoping Christmas weekend, I think, is the first weekend I'll have a chance at that. I'm not going to head out there Christmas Day, so it's probably at least going to be a couple of weeks. But certainly stay up to date with me. I intend on delivering as much content as possible. I know it's been daily, 1 to 2, sometimes 3 videos. That'll probably slow down over the holidays, so I appreciate you sticking with me. I'm going to try and get you as much interesting stuff as I can. But of course, I hope everybody has a happy holidays, whether you celebrate or not. It's a great season. If you live in an area where it's winter, we got dumped on with snow here. I'm hoping actually to find some towers that have been either water damaged or snow damaged, to go through those and see what we can clean up, what we can fix, and give a little detail around what happens if you leave your computer outside, which is probably not a terribly common condition you'll find your computer in, but would make for some interesting content. That being said, if you've watched my Acer Aspire videos, I do have that up and running. That just needs to get reassembled. And then we are very close to 100 subscribers. My goal is when we hit that number, we will be moving forward with the answer to our poll question, which is I'll be playing a game on real hardware, real time, live streaming, and that game will be selected by that poll. The last I checked, the leader was Doom, the original id Software game, which is one of my favorites growing up. Certainly kind of a ubiquitous favorite, I think, for anybody who plays PC games. But I'd love to get that out there, and to be playing it on a Windows 98 2nd Edition computer would be really cool. I myself first played Doom on Windows 95, so stay tuned for that. Again, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and hit that notification icon to stay up to date with me. We are now into the system. It did boot properly from the solid state drive. Everything seems to be in good working order. Looks like it's updating date and time properly. So that's really positive. Let's see here. So let's take a look and get the specs on our recent additions. It's taking a while to load. I'm guessing because it's still in startup and I didn't let it finish doing its thing. This is a pretty powerful PC. It shouldn't have any issue going through startup routine. Now I've not edited the startup program, so to be honest with you, I don't know. I don't really know if there's much to worry about there. So looking things over, I see we've got a couple partitions on some of these drives. So let's see, our G drive here is out of a Dell. And it looks like it has a factory image on it with the recovery partition, about 15 gigabytes. There's also a system partition of 198 megabytes, an OS partition, looks like it's Windows, configured for a user. So that to me indicates that that's probably our 500 gig hard disk down here. Must have came out of a Dell, and it had a bootable version of Windows on it, and I do see that it was last run in 2015, so I'm gonna guess that was probably Windows 7 installed on there. Yep, I can actually hear it. I'm opening a folder on it right now, and you can physically hear the drive working. So that's a good thing. At least it tells me that the mechanics of the driver sound. It's very quiet, almost imperceptible. You probably aren't able to hear it on the cell phone there, but it's taking its dear sweet time to open, which is interesting because this should be, again, this is a Western Digital Blue. The access on this should be, I want to say at least a gigabyte a second. I don't know. It doesn't say on this drive, so that's interesting. I mean, it's a physical hard drive, so those typically have slower access, but it is SATA, 7200 RPM, so I would think it's fairly quick. Interesting. Well, if anybody knows what the access data transfer rate over the SATA connection should be for this drive, leave a comment. I'd be very interested to know. Again, ultimately, it doesn't make a huge difference here. While that's pulling that up, I should be able to open a new file explorer and get a look at the other drives on this PC. So we've got a local disk, J. That's interesting. So this also looks to be bootable. Last accessed in 2014. That's kind of odd. Well, while that's bringing that up, that's also taking some time. I looked at these hard drives before, so I wonder if that's a partition on the solid state drive, which would be very interesting. I see it's HP tools and recovery, so it makes me wonder if that solid state drive came out of a laptop or something. Or it could potentially be a partition. I don't know. All I know is that these two drives, even though this one was sealed in a bag, apparently have data on them, and both are bootable. One definitely older than the other. We're just waiting for it to open at this point. So, I mean, the good news is, in total, we've got a fair amount of space here. Once we get these formatted, it looks like, at least based on the aggregate amount of space, we're looking at a terabyte a piece, or 500 gigabytes for the one and a terabyte for the other. So 1.5, that's not bad. That's a pretty good range. It's also possible, based on the partitioning here, that it's a 750 and a 500. So 1.25, that's what I originally thought, but it's kind of hard to tell when they subdivide these up. The recovery partitions, I personally don't understand. To me, with the cloud, why can't you just have a recovery backed up either to the cloud or a recovery disk of some kind with like an image of the hard drive? with Blu-ray technology, you'd think you could do it, or have just a compact flash or something. I guess if you're backing up a lot of data, that makes sense. But with compression, I would think these days you could probably do something a little more clever. Again, I've been out of the game a while, so please educate me. If I say anything that's wrong or doesn't make sense or I'm clearly misunderstanding something, I'm very open to being wrong about stuff and would love to be corrected. So just looking at what we've got here, let's see. Looks like we got a little bit of music on one of these. I do see that there's some files in here that were accessed as soon as, or as recently as 2019. And primarily, though, it looks like whichever hard drive this is, this one or that one, it looks like it hasn't been used very recently. No idea what exactly this is for. It looks like a business, probably of some kind. Just trying to see. Again, I'm not really interested in anybody's data, but I'm just curious what this might have been used for once upon a time. No idea. Nothing tremendous anyway. If there was something noteworthy, I would certainly share, but I don't see that there's anything. Okay, it looks like this may have been used for a church of some kind. They've got some worship stuff on here, so cool. Again, doesn't matter to me. It's nothing. There's no identifying information, so it's just images and whatnot that are going to get erased. So sorry if anybody was particularly attached to this stuff. Prior owner, if you're out there, you ever find this video, know that your data is in safe, capable hands, and is going to be erased permanently. The other disk drive, which I'm still waiting for access on, I'm assuming must be the physical disk drive because it's taking a really long time to load. And even though this is an older solid state drive, it should have a shorter access rate time. One possibility I didn't think of that is occurring to me now is that this just could be a small physical hard drive and not a solid state with tone arms and everything. And this might have been something out of a laptop, which is starting to make a little bit more sense to me. Again, it's got a boatload of space, so I'm not going to complain. Physical hard drive or a solid state hard drive doesn't matter to me. I would, however, like for it to access a little bit faster, but honestly, the amount of data I'm going to access here, I'm not going to be transferring all at once anyway. So again, it begs the question, what do we use all this space for? Do you have any suggestions out there, followers? I'd be happy to entertain them. Drop me a comment. Again, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Share me with your friends if you're in the retro community, whether it's gaming, computers, retro tech. I don't know if you've looked at any of my other videos. I do have a Laserdisc repair video. It was one of the first videos I did for this channel. It's not a great video. I think I've come a long way since then, but certainly could be interesting content for you. But ultimately at this point, this is Urza's tower. This is my tower that I've built here. If you get the Magic the Gathering reference, chuckles between us. Again, it's just a project of taking stuff from my boneyard, throwing it together and building kind of the best rig we can out of spare parts. I'm a little bummed that the full regiment of RAM didn't work. These are dead as far as I can tell. If I come across another DDR3 capable system, I'll toss them in there and just see if they magically start to work. But when I had them installed here, it gave me a memory fault. I isolated it to both chips. Whether or not they're going to function in another system, I don't know. It's unlikely. But I did have 2 other sticks that work on this board. So we went from a total of 8 to a total of 10 gigs of RAM, which is not, not a ton, but it's very capable against some of the other machines we've looked at recently, and will make for more functionality than I really even need. So at this point, I think we're going to go ahead and just let it continue to access this file here. If I had something interesting to report, I would definitely let you know, but there's nothing terribly fascinating going on right now. So with that, I do have the side panel here. Again, it's dirty and not exactly the most elegant looking thing, and it's just not going to be. But it does have a 5 1/4 inch fan slot that I do intend on filling with a fan when possible. So that will eventually fit on right here. We'll have a nice fan in the side, maybe something with some LEDs, make it look cool. There's a ton of air movement in this machine, so it really doesn't need the additional cooling power. The one thing this case is missing is the front faceplate, which, again, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't care. It's not pretty. The rest of the case needs to be sanded and repainted. The little plexiglass here has scratches in it. Could some of that be cleaned up? Sure. But again, got this at a recycler. I'm not gonna complain about some garbage I picked up. And overall, honestly, it's in decent shape. It's a little bent up, but it's perfectly functional. I mean, obviously the mechanics are all good. This is water damaged. That has been cleaned up and repaired. And at this point, it's got more storage space than it was probably ever intended to have. To get another couple 4 sticks of RAM, to boost this to a full 16 gigabyte would be very doable. I don't actually know. I haven't looked up the motherboard specs here. I don't know if it would be something that I could even take to 32 gig or what the max is for this particular board. But there's some growth potential here. And again, I could always buy a new case. Cases are cheap. So that's all I've got for you. I know this is a longer video with kind of a fixed static image. You let me know. Do you prefer the fixed static image, or would you prefer me kind of moving around and showing you guys each individual connector and component? There's no splices here. I'm not cutting things up very much. There's a couple of dead air spots I'll be cutting out, but aside from that, this is kind of the format that I was kind of aiming for, is something where there's a fixed camera. You might see my hands, occasionally my face, top of my head or something. But if you don't like it, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to get the feedback. Any feedback is a gift, positive, negative, or otherwise. And again, any suggestions for this case? Now, I'm not going to dump a bunch of money into this, obviously, spare parts machine. But if there's something cool you think I could do with this level of space, this level of memory, honestly, I'm not much of a modern gamer, so gaming is probably out, but I'm open to ideas. I'm definitely open-minded. So with that, that's all I've got for you. Again, thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Hit that subscribe button, share it out, like button, notification button. Keep up to date with me. I am Urza Master, 1/3 of the Digital Escape podcast. You can find that link on my main channel page, or you can find us here on YouTube, Digital Escape Podcast. Thanks very much. Have a great night.